Hello, my name is Angela Hayes. I'm the Associate Director of Alumni and Online Career Engagement. Today we'll be talking about how to find remote work. And this webinar and the ones that follow each week are going to be a bit different than what I normally do, in that we'll be spending just 15 to 20 minutes on the material. I'll be recording that part for those who want to watch and access this content later. And then I'll turn off the recording and take questions through the chat feature. This will provide confidentiality for those of you who want to ask me questions about your job search. I'll also be sending the PowerPoint to those who came to this live webinar later today, because there are a lot of links that you could get started on right away. You'll just want to switch the PowerPoint slides to the slideshow view in order to make the links clickable. I'll also put that instruction when I send the webinar to you later. So for those of you who are watching the recording of this webinar, you'll find the links in the notes below the YouTube video, because this will go on our Career Center YouTube channel. So let's get started. Remote job openings were already on the rise before COVID started. So between 2017 and right before COVID, there was a 270% increase in remote jobs being listed. Now, even more employers want a chance to recruit from a vast pool of talent, unrestricted by geographic distance. In the last several years, the majority of remote jobs were a combination of remote work and in-office work. That's very likely to change to almost all remote for the foreseeable future. If you're working at a remote job during this time and you're showing how productive you can be, you have a good chance of being able to stay 100% remote when this crisis is over. Because many things are changing in the workplace, including needing to make expensive changes to, for example, things like open office plans that aren't going to work anymore in terms of cutting down virus transmission, or paying a lot of money for nice offices that no one's using. So it's likely that changes will be made during this time that will remain permanent once employers see the value of the cost savings of allowing employees to work from home. So today we'll be talking about the best ways to find remote work during these uncertain times, and ways to gain confidence and clarity as you move forward in your career. So these are the three main areas that we're going to cover. How to be strategic in each of these areas. So preparing for your search and spotting and avoiding scams during that search, researching companies and remote work websites, and preparing your application materials in ways that make you an even more attractive candidate for remote work. These are the common keywords that you'll want to use when looking for remote work. So you might Google something like remote work and IT, or telework and project management. Or you can put the type of position you're looking for into a remote work site that we'll talk about in a bit. Or if you're on a typical job board, let's say Indeed, or the company website has a number of locations, you've already put in the what, so what sort of job you're looking for. In the where part of the screen, you can put terms like telework or remote work. You can also upload your resume to these sites in your cover letter with a clear indication that you're looking for remote work. Keep in mind that different companies use different job titles for the same type of work, so you want to do research on the companies that you're most interested in to see what titles they're using for your preferred positions. Also note that using the words work from home or work at home have by far the highest likelihood of returning results that are job scams. Much better to use the other terms that we've listed here. Now, this is a list that existed before COVID. So these were the common career fields with remote work before COVID, so they're the most likely to have established remote jobs in these fields. However, nearly everything else that doesn't require an employee's physical presence is on the table now. In some cases, you'll need to be creative and persuasive in explaining how you can do the job completely remotely. So you'll want to be ready to explain your ideas for getting work done effectively and efficiently in a remote setting. We need to talk a little bit about scams because I've seen more of them now than I have ever seen before. So to spot the scams, and I won't go through this whole list, but some of the main things to keep in mind: if they ask you to pay for anything up front, so that might be training or equipment, or they might say they need you to pay for your background check, that's a scam. If they don't interview you, or they interview you through an instant messenger chat or something, especially if it's brief, that's a scam. If they have a really vague job description, and okay, a lot of employers don't write the best job descriptions, but these are different. These are so vague that you have no idea what the job actually is or what you'd be doing, but they make it, the one thing that they make clear is that you'll have to do very little work for a whole lot of money. That's a scam. If you ask them a lot of questions, and you have every right to ask them questions. What are the key qualifications for this job? How long have you been in business? Who are your clients? If they get impatient with you or testy with you because you're asking these questions, that's a scam. Anything that seems off to you probably is. Trust your gut and your instincts. If something seems too good to be true, it probably is. You can always call me as well. I can check with our employer connections team to see if they've had dealings with this group before and pass on any recommendations that they have. Again, remember, there's a lot more scams right now as scammers are trying to take advantage of the chaos of the situation and some desperation that's out there. So be vigilant. To research companies that offer remote work options, you can start with FlexJob's list of the top rated 100 companies with remote jobs. And then I've also included a list of thousands of companies that have offered remote jobs in the past. So again, these are the most likely to already have an established process. So it can go quicker. Hiring for a remote job can go more quickly in those kinds of situations rather than places that have never had remote workers before. But even if they're not on either of those lists, companies that interest you might very well have remote jobs. They just haven't had the time to update that in the jobs that they've already posted, or they haven't yet posted new ones as they're trying to figure out all of the things that go into remote work. So you can get in touch with HR at a company, or recruiters or hiring managers or other employees to find out more. And that can happen through social media, LinkedIn, or just calling or emailing them. I've given you 2 slides of remote work sites, and I won't go through all of them because, again, you'll be getting these slides right after the presentation. Keep in mind that many of these platforms are for freelance jobs. Not all of them, but many of them are, which means that you'll be responsible for paying taxes. You won't qualify for the usual company benefits like health insurance, retirement plans, and so on. You basically have no protections that an employee of the company would have. However, there's been a new development. One thing that has changed is that gig workers and freelance workers, I'll use those interchangeably, who lose their jobs or have to leave their jobs specifically because of COVID, in most cases will now qualify for unemployment. That's not ever been the case before. Okay, so there's a couple other things I'd like to point out here. FlexJobs is having a virtual career fair on May 21st from 10 to 5 Eastern time. So you might want to check that out. And then Remote Co is their sister site, and these are all 100% remote jobs with no location restrictions. Now that's not always the case with remote job sites. For some companies, they need to conduct business in a specific location due to licensing requirements or government regulations, so you'd have to live in that state also. And for others, it's a tax issue. The company may only be able to pay or collect taxes in certain locations. And some want you to be near clients or near the home office for meetings and training. I want to point out a couple of other things. Both FreeUp and Boldly will vet and interview you before you're allowed on the site. In the case of Boldly, they'll match you with companies that fit your skill set, and you have to have at least 7 years of experience in your field to gain entry to this site. Here's a few other remote work sites. I want to point out a couple of other things. The second to last one, Remote Jobs Club, scans many remote job sites, not all of them that I've listed here, but many. And it sends you emails of opportunities based on the criteria you've entered. So that can be good for just your time. If you don't have time to go through every single one of these sites that I've listed, this can give you a good overview of the kinds of things that are available. I also want to point out Slack communities. Slack communities are a great way to get connected with communities across all industries. So whatever your industry is, very likely there's a Slack community that is on Slack talking about it. So not only can you network with other people in your industry, but also very often recruiters are on there and you'll find out about positions that aren't listed anywhere else. Now, preparing your materials for a remote job is different than just preparing your resume for an on-site job. So beyond having the skills and experience in the job description, employers want to see evidence that you're flexible and disciplined enough to work alone. So consider adapting your resume to highlight any previous remote work experience, and I've listed some specifics on the slide, as well as including any achievements gathered while working from home. So if you solved a big crisis or put on a huge presentation from home, tell recruiters about that. Rewrite your resume and cover letter to emphasize projects where you collaborated with distant teammates, maybe across different time zones. And since working at home means you'll have limited access to the company IT desk, it's smart to include a list of the collaboration software and web and video conferencing tools that you know how to use. We'll have another webinar on video interviewing, but be thinking about how you'll answer questions like, why do you want to work remotely? And what skills do you have that make you productive in a remote work environment? Now is also the perfect time to learn new skills. Analyze job descriptions that interest you and see what skills and experience are needed. Consider whether you have those exact skills, whether you used to have them and need to brush up, or whether you don't have them at all. And then use that information to determine what you need to learn to make you an even better candidate. Many of the skills you need might be related to working remotely, like learning how to use collaboration platforms like Slack or Microsoft Teams, or video software for meetings and presentations like Zoom or GoToMeeting. Think in terms of what will help convince the employer that you are ready to tackle working from home. If you can, find out what platforms are being used by employers and companies of interest, and then learn those platforms. I've given you a lot of free or low-cost options for learning basically anything you can think of. I just saw that on the first one, it's the Institute of Program Management, so Program Management Institute. I've never seen them offer free courses on program management before, but they're offering them now because of COVID, and that can be an excellent skill set to learn. Only about 1% of project managers have a project management certification, so it can look really good on your resume. So of course there are other ways that you can upskill and network, like doing volunteer work or short projects or freelance work. But it's important to make a plan for when you want to have mastered these new skills, and then do your best to stick to a schedule of completion. I know that's difficult in our current circumstances. Some days you'll only be able to take very small steps to move forward in your learning and your job search, and that's completely fine. The important thing is to keep moving forward. And then last, take care of yourself. Eat well, exercise, get enough sleep, and go easy on yourself. We're all at some level of fight, flight, or freeze, given the number of very real threats that we're facing on a daily basis. That can make some people feel a bit fuzzy, others just not as motivated. Some people might feel really angry at the situation, fearful. There can be all kinds of reactions. Taking care of yourself and those you care about is the best way to reduce those feelings. Control what you can control and try to let go of what you can't. If you'd like to contact me individually, you'll find my contact information here. And I'm now going to stop the recording.